Seller financing and private lenders. Who out there doesn't need a private lender or a seller that'll seller finance for you? That's what we're talking about today on Goat Talk. So you guys go grab that other cup of coffee or Mountain Dew or whatever it is that you like. And we'll be back in about 45 seconds. Good morning, sub-tours. Welcome to Goat Talk. Gosh, today is Goat Talk for June the 2nd, 2022. Is the year almost half over? I think it is. Okay. If you're on here on Facebook or YouTube, introduce yourself. Tell us where you are, what your favorite type of investing is. If you haven't yet, make sure that you subscribe to our YouTube channel. And you can go to subtwodeals.com/YouTube and do that. We post, 5 or 6 videos a week, goat nuggets and podcasts, and of course, Goat Talk. Bunch of stuff to help you with your real estate investing. So we'd love to have you do that. If you're new to creative finance, or maybe you're a wholesaler, you're wondering what all the fuss is about creative finance, I'd like to invite you to the best deal in creative finance training on the planet. And that is $7coaching.com. You can join us in $7 coaching. We'll teach you all about creative finance, how it works, and answer your questions every single week. So join us there if you like. Let's see who's on here with us this morning before we get rolling. Gosh, Marcia, good to see you this morning, Marcia. Hope you're doing well. Guys, today we're talking about seller financing. We're talking about private lenders. And I know if you're getting started in real estate, it's seller financing is fabulous. You don't have to go to the bank. You don't have to apply for any loans. Your credit doesn't matter. All of those things aren't important at all. Hey, Corey, good to see you. Phil, good to see you this morning. We're bringing on, Ed Zulyevic. He is awesome. Sub-2 Max student. I've known Ed for a long time. Good morning, Ed. Good to see you.
Good morning, William. How you doing? Great to see you too.
I am finer than frog hair. Hey, Terry Cuffey. Good to see you this morning there. Hey, Terry, we're proud to have you on here. We love you. So we're good to see you this morning. But we had a great time with these guys. Gosh, Phil, Corey, Terry, they were all with us at the Sub-2 Max Mastermind we had a couple of weeks ago here in Florida. Just terrific thing. So Ed, tell everybody a little bit about Ed, how you got started in real estate investing.
Yeah, I've gone down so many different pathways, like many of us, right? You do this and you do that. But my real estate career, honestly, it started right after I got married, probably in about 1995. And it was one of those points in my life where, we didn't have a lot of money, like a lot of newlyweds. And we just found a house that we could afford. It needed a lot of work. And my dad was a general contractor back in the day in the 70s. So I had, some help and some technical knowledge. So we bought this house and kind of remodeled it. And it took about 2 years, living in it and saving up, for flooring and paint and, all the things to make it, that suited our needs. And then it was about 2 years afterwards, we decided to move to a different part of town because we were planning on having some kids at that point, different school district. So we listed the house and sold it. And that was really when the light bulb came on actually. And we realized, what what equity was, right?
Mhm.
Forced
Right.
equity.
Mhm.
So we were sitting on a pretty chunky change, and so we just started to duplicate that. We went from house to house to house, and picked up some rental properties along the way, and that was really the first aha moment. The
Mhm.
first moment. There's two moments really, but
Right.
that was the first one that got me into real estate.
Right.
And
I know you and I talked in the past. You and I shared something in common with the Carlton Sheets course. We both
yeah,
got started in investing with
yep,
that. Yeah.
exactly. Yep.
Hmm.
I still have a couple of them, right?
Hmm.
And
Right.
I flipped through, and you're always on a quest for learning, and
Hmm.
you dig through that old stuff, and I'll pick up a nugget or two, and I'm, oh
Right.
man, I missed that, 20
Hmm.
years ago, and yeah,
Right.
it's all good stuff.
Carlton Sheets put the creative in creative financing. I mean, he
Mm,
had 1,000 different ways to buy houses. I mean, some of them are so crazy and whatever, but I guess
mm,
it works. I mean, obviously,
yeah,
somebody's done it at some point. Hey
yeah.
guys, if y'all have any questions, jump in there and drop those in. Before Ed and I came on here this morning, we were talking a little bit about private lenders, and I know a lot of investors struggle with that. Well, gosh, how do I get the money? Especially if you do creative stuff like we do. A lot of times you will need money for maybe a little bit of fix up or a down payment to a seller or something like that. And you tell people this, they don't really get it. But Ed, what you and I were talking about this morning is your biggest, most immediate source for private money is right there at the contact list in your
Mm,
phone. Now, I know you use a few private lenders, but what you were telling me this morning is they almost all were people that you had acquaintances with already.
correct. Yeah,
Yeah.
it's always for me, like, a lot of people have different ways of
Hmm.
sourcing those people, but for me, it's right in my phone.
Hmm. Right.
It's
So
relationships.
So let's say that I'm a new investor. What advice would you give someone? Let's say I'm new and I want to have some of these things set up because it's always better to have them set up ahead of time than be scrambling around when you need it. Let's say that I don't have credit cards. I don't have sources of money that I could get to in a hurry, but I know a lot of people. How do you initiate that conversation with
Mm,
someone about borrowing money from them? What does that sound like?
yeah, it sounds like it's just a conversation. It's
Hmm.
you have a relationship with this person, and you let them know what you do,
Hmm.
why you do it, what your goals are, and introduce them to that idea of being a lender.
Right.
Yeah.
So I mean, would you approach that with you have lunch with whoever and you say, "Hey, Bob, I'm investing in real estate now. I've bought a couple of houses or whatever credentials you can
Hmm.
give them at that point. They already know you, so they have some level of trust with you. So you got a little money parked in the bank. What's the bank paying these days? I mean,
Hmm.
how do you throw that out there? What compelling, statement can you
Yeah.
make to them to get them interested? How does that work?
Yeah. It can start off a couple different ways. One, you have your elevator pitch, right?
Mhm,
And that's basically, I teach private lenders how to get higher rate of returns on their investment dollar or their retirement accounts than they can get anywhere else, and it's collateralized by real property.
mhm,
And from there, usually they say, well, what do you mean? Because that's kind of an open-ended statement. Like,
right,
I teach I teach people how to get better returns on investment dollar. So
right,
now the question's up to them. They're like, well, define that. What do you mean? And then you go into, hey, this is what I do, right?
mhm,
I buy small apartments or I buy fourplexes, and if your money's sitting in a savings account, what are you doing with it? Why is it
mhm,
sitting there? Why are you
right,
not getting a better return? And as we move forward, and with the current market conditions, where are we with inflation today? It's
mhm,
not good. If you have
right,
$100,000 in a bank, by the end of the year, your buying power is probably $85,000.
mhm,
You've lost 15%.
right,
So it's just getting them to think of, you know, um, how can you leverage the dollars that you have better than the
mhm,
way you're doing it now? And if you can
right,
show them through a track record or some passion, team members that you have a plan and that's safe and secure and it's collateralized by real property.
Right.
It's not a difficult thing to sell. It's a pretty
Mhm.
easy answer for them to figure out.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay. All
Because
right.
at the end of the day, if you wake up and the stock market crashes,
Mhm.
what do you have?
Yeah.
Who knows?
Right.
If your flip house burns down, awesome. I got
Mhm.
insurance. You're the
Right.
additional loss payee.
Mhm.
It's easy one to tell them.
Right. Okay. Hey, Sarah, good to see you. Crystal, good morning. Matt Smith's here. Good to see all of you guys. Hey, if y'all haven't, go to StreamYard.com/Facebook and let us know who you are so we'll know who we're talking to. Got a comment here from someone who said, my private lenders aren't in real estate, so they become a headache to work with. They don't understand how mortgages work or the legal stuff. They get nervous and back away.
Hmm.
You know, I have to agree with what Ed says here. I talk about my very first private lender was actually someone that I bought their house on a sandwich lease option. They got used to getting a payment from me for 2 or 3 years, and then when we cashed their house out, I actually took his check out to him. He was an older guy, and I said, "Hey, what you going to do with that money?" And he said, "Well, what you got in mind?" Because he was used to, I mean, we had that relationship by then, and he was used to getting paid. Most of the private lenders that I've had, and we're talking about private lenders here, not hard money or any of that stuff they talk about today, whatever they call it, I don't know. But we're not talking about people that are super sophisticated in real estate. We're talking about people that have a relationship with you. They might know, because everybody thinks real estate's a great investment. Real estate's always going to go up and up. A lot of people have misinformation about some real estate. But everybody pretty much thinks real estate's a good investment. So I don't really want private lenders that are super savvy. What about you, Ed? What do you think about that?
Yeah, when they get super savvy, they want more and more and more, right? So they want um, those higher interest rates, shorter terms.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
Yep.
I would stick with, you know,
Hey,
I'd say the lenders I have, where are they in their life? They're
uh-huh.
they're retired or they're very, very close to
Right.
retirement. So they
Mm-hmm.
don't have a lot of money sitting in the stock market because
Right.
it's not safe anymore because they're
Mm-hmm.
too close to retirement. So they're sitting in CDs, bonds, and just look at what those returns are.
Mm-hmm.
Google it. What's a bond or a CD at
Mm-hmm.
today's rate, right? When I
Right.
can pay 6-7% interest on the money they have. So if
Mm-hmm.
I can, 10 or 15 times give them the return of what they
Right.
have in that CD, it's going to get them to be thinking, right?
Mm-hmm. Right. So what do you think? I mean, as far as with private lending right now, what should someone be paying a private lender?
Uh, you know, that's the benefit of private lenders is
Mm-hmm.
you get to sit down with them and ask them what they need. You
Mm-hmm.
get to have that conversation on those terms.
Right.
No one else dictates that for you.
Mm-hmm.
So I don't usually throw a number out. I
Mm-hmm.
try and sit with them. You don't have that conversation and just say,
Right.
hey, what are you looking for? What would make you happy if I could
Right.
collateralize this loan with something that's real? And
Mm-hmm.
let them, if they're happy with 4 and I was willing to pay 8, awesome.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Hey, Andrew, good to see you. Got Cindy Crane down there in Mississippi. Cindy, you're not working out in your garden this morning. We got Kristen. Let's see. Luke Mitchell has a question. He said, curious if the consensus is that getting private lenders will be easier given everyone exiting the stock market and investing in real estate. What do you think about that, Ed?
That's possible. Yeah, absolutely. Yep. We
Yeah.
need, because
So
there's always people looking for yield, right? They
mm-hmm.
want a return. And if they're
Right.
not going to get it in the stock market, they're going to look elsewhere.
Mm-hmm. Okay. I've got Mark here this morning. Good morning from floating down the river in the Texas Hill Country.
Mm.
Mark, are you really watching Goat Talk floating down the river? Tell me more about that.
Oh my
Andrew
God, Mark.
Andrew said, are your investors hip to current inflation rates and know they need to beat it? That's on them, of course, just wondering.
Mm.
My experience says,
Yeah.
like I said, they're just not that. I'm looking for a private lender that trusts me, that just wants a better return than what they're getting. I don't even think they put it together with current interest rates and those things.
No,
They
not
know
yet.
they're
Haven't.
getting 1% at the bank, and if I say that I'll give them 5, they're like, "Yippee, that's great."
Right. Yep.
Yeah.
Absolutely. I agree.
Mhm. That's my thing. So if you guys have questions about private lending, let us have those here. So Ed's real thing is he likes to turn his sellers into his lenders. So I think that's
Hmm.
really his area of expertise. So tell us a little bit about that, Ed. So you do marketing, but now Ed is a realtor. He's a broker. You guys own a brokerage, and you're always looking for agents. I know you told me that this morning. So
Hmm.
you guys are in the Oregon market primarily. Do you guys nationwide or just that market, or what are y'all doing right now?
We're focused in the Willamette Valley in Oregon, up and down the I-5 corridor.
Hmm.
But we have some agents in North Dakota,
Hmm.
Florida, and
Okay.
California,
So
Washington.
all over.
It's
So
yeah,
if
because
you're
we
an
can.
agent or thinking about being one, you should contact Ed, correct?
Correct. Yep.
Okay. And I think
I'm happy
we
to help.
got something here. This is where you can contact Ed at theexitagents.com.
There you go.
So if you guys are thinking about that, or you'd like to talk to him about it a little bit. Uh, so so I know, and I've talked to a lot of investors who use being an agent as an advantage for them when
Mhm.
they talk to sellers that either don't have enough equity, which hasn't really been a big problem recently, but it does happen,
No.
but or for whatever reason can't sell. You just flip them and convert them to an
Yeah.
investor. You just switch your agent hat to an investor hat. But tell us about that. How do you convert a seller who, in typical
Mm.
seller for us today, yeah, I want 500,000 for my house, all cash. You sit down with that person. How do you flip that person to become your lender through seller financing?
Yeah. That's there. There's the. It's more art than science,
Hmm.
and it goes back to um, having your ears tuned to what they're saying. So you got to sit down with a person because you have to solve the person first, right? It's not about, God, I really, really want this house, because we don't really know what they have and where they want to go in their life. So
Hmm.
it's always a conversation, and
Right.
sometimes it might take, like a deal I worked on. It took a couple of weeks of sitting down
Hmm.
with a seller, different days, to figure out where they are in their life today, what are they trying to achieve, where are they going,
Hmm.
right? This is, for the most part, it's an investment property that I'm dealing with, the seller. So they've owned this property, and there's a lot of marketing that, I talk about this every month, a lot of marketing stuff in the group,
Hmm.
but it's about um, what are they trying to achieve, right? They've owned this property for 25, 30 years, and what's happened over that time? They've become accustomed to having an income stream being
Hmm.
generated from this property. So now when it comes time to sell, they're like, I'm just done. I'm a tired landlord. I'm done with all this BS. I'm just going to sell. Well, heck, there's a lot of capital gains tax to
Right.
have to pay because now they don't want a 1031 exchange into something else. They're tired. They want
Hmm.
their money. So you need to sit down with those individuals and identify what are these points of pain in their life. What are they trying to achieve and solve? If you can come into their life and say, you know what, I would love to buy this property. It's just a beautiful property. I really, really would like it. If I was to help you get to that point in your life where you could still get an income stream off this property, but forego the capital gains tax and depreciation recapture and all that stuff that goes along with it, management and everything, you know, is this a conversation that we could have? And
Hmm.
and as soon as you talk about um, capital gains tax, they're like, "What? I don't have to pay it, or I can pay it later? What are you
Hmm.
talking about?" So there's a point of agreement between you and the seller that opens up another conversation, and now you can have that dialogue.
Right.
Now you can talk about, what if we were to be able to do this for you, and what if we could do this, and would this achieve your goals to get you where you want to go?
Right.
it is an amazing thing.
Right.
It absolutely is.
Right. So what I'm hearing you say is if you're looking for sellers who are more likely to sell or finance to you, then you need to be targeting landlords, especially that have owned the property for a long period of time. Maybe they have a lot of equity. If they've owned it for a long time, they've got all that depreciation recapture. And those are the people that you have a lot of success flipping because they're used to the monthly income, but they don't want to have to pay all the taxes.
Right. For my marketing strategy, those are the filters that I would put on to help
Right.
stack the odds into my favor.
Right.
Yep.
Okay.
Yep.
And that's how you find your seller financing. Okay.
Exactly.
Good tip. Terry here said, I got my dividend from Navy Federal checking account for this month. I earned 1 cent. Oh, wow.
Yay.
Be easy to beat that return, I think. Marcia, what is the max number of private lenders you can have? Gosh, I'd say as many as you can collect.
As many as you can collect. You
Yeah.
know, you do have to be careful. Like, you know, we live in this world of social media, right? And everything's everybody sees what we do.
Right.
There are SEC rules. Like
Mhm.
I just always tell everybody, I try and stay away from the 3-letter entities, right?
Mhm.
FBI, CIA, SEC,
Right.
DEQ, IRS. There's so many rules, right? Stay away from
Right.
those 3-letter danger things.
Right.
So you can't go out and say, you know, post on Facebook and I'm looking for private investors. It's like there's
Mhm.
rules, right? There's federal rules for that. So you have to know what those
Mhm.
are. I'm not an expert. I'm not an attorney, but know that there's rules to follow.
Right.
And
And again, that's another reason to start with the people you already know because you can avoid some of those SEC issues if these are people that you know, that you already have a relationship with, because they have rules as far as number of contacts you have to make and things like that.
right. Yep.
Okay.
Yep.
All right. Matt's got a question. What's the easiest way to get a private lender? Well, Matt, that's, that's what we've been talking about today. It's
Right
the
there, right there,
people,
phone.
the people that you already know. People that you already know, and really think about this for a minute. How many times do you run into a situation? And I know I have found this a lot over the years. I teach you guys to get into a house where your buyer's down payment covers whatever your cost to acquire it was. So if your seller wants $10,000, if you've got to spend $10,000 on paint and carpet, and it costs you 2 or 3,000 in closing costs and acquisition and marketing, then I'm looking for something where I can at least get 23,000 down from my buyer. Then I'm in for nothing, and that's pretty powerful when you acquire an asset for nothing. You got instant cash flow, a back end, and that 23 is going to come back to you in the back end payoff too. But maybe you want to rent that house out, so maybe it's 10,000 to your seller, and the house is in good condition. Well, you need a lender that'll just fund $10,000. That's most people that that are fairly successful have 10,000 in a savings account or 20 or 50. They don't have to have millions of dollars to be a private lender. In fact, most private lenders I've ever known had 50 or 100, or less even, and they can be a private lender for you. Is that the case for you, Ed, as well?
Absolutely. Yeah, it's the person that you least likely would think would have some money that actually has the money, right? You know, if they drive around in a flashy car and all living a high life, they probably don't have, what my neighbors that look like they're poor across the street over that my biggest private lender's over there.
Right.
They just live a frugal life and they just want simple things in life and they saved and worked hard and
Okay. All right. Hey, Bill Walston. Good to see you this morning. Let's see. We got a Facebook user. Good morning. Can't say who you are here. So you need to go to streamyard.com/Facebook. Let us know who you are. Okay. So let's see. How are you tracking funds borrowed from the private lender? Do you borrow as a project comes up or have funds available in advance paying interest? I've always borrowed as needed for an individual deal. I'll sit down with those guys, have a conversation, try to find out how much they have available to put into real estate. And if they say I've got 50, if I come up with something that needs 10, I'll call them up, say, hey, I need 10 for this particular deal. We do the note, everything else. It's just as needed. Is that the same for you?
Same here.
Yeah.
Yeah, I actually have a spreadsheet. It's a small spreadsheet because
Mm-hmm.
I don't have a ton of private lenders,
Right.
but I actually have a sticky note I keep it on the dash of my truck. I have
Mm-hmm.
about 6 people on what they've made soft commitments for. And
Mm-hmm.
when I find something, I'm actually keeping those people for a special project I'm working on, a new
Right.
build here
Mm-hmm.
soon. But yeah, just keep it simple. I don't think your list is going to be massive unless you're doing some syndication. And then
Right.
we're talking about some different rules in
Oh,
place
yeah.
at that point.
Right. For sure. Okay. So again, you guys have your questions, private lenders, seller financing. Let us have those. Tell us about, and going back to what we were saying earlier about seller financing, tell us about a recent deal that you've done, Ed, where you flipped somebody that maybe wanted to sell their house and you were able to have a conversation with them, what they needed, how you took care of that and made a really good deal for yourself.
Yeah, the most recent one would be a mobile home park that we bought
Mm-hmm. Right.
end of last year, 2021, about October. And it is a long case study, but I'll break it into
Mm-hmm.
something that's very bite-sized chunks here. The commercial property was listed. Uh, we found it because we took a couple of listings that were in the park, and I went on a listing appointment for one of the sellers that was selling their manufactured home. Found a parking spot. This guy comes running out. It's kind of parked along on the side of the road. Guy comes running out, and he says, "Hey, you can't park there." I'm like, "Oh, I'm so sorry, right?" It's like, where can I park? And he's like, well, what are you doing here? It's like, well, I'm taking a listing for Miss Joan over there. He's like, "Oh, okay, yeah, you can park there." And he's like, "Oh, it's a good. So I said, "Okay." So I said hi real quick, and I said, well, who are you? And he goes, "I'm a park owner." I'm like, "Oh." And at this point, I already put an offer in with his agent because this park was for sale, but I didn't know who he was. I just put an offer in, talked with the agent, and then I thought, well, how am I going to navigate this? Right? I'm talking with a seller. It's very rare that we ever get to talk with sellers face to face. But as we started talking, I told him that I was a buyer that put an offer in. We started having that conversation, and his big point of pain was price point. He wanted top dollar for the park, you know.
Mhm.
So, I talked to him for maybe about 30 minutes, and in that conversation, um, I try and find those off ramps in the conversation. Well, why are you selling? Oh, we want to retire. Awesome. How long have you owned the park? Well, I've owned it for 25 years. Excellent. What are you trying to achieve? Trying to gather all those bits and pieces of information. Well, it came at the end of the story. He didn't want to pay capital gains tax, so he wanted to
Mhm.
get extra money for the property to kind of recuperate some of that
Right.
tax, right? So, anyways, long story short, we met with him a few days later, multiple different times. Very firm, was not interested in owner financing. But as I sat down and talked with him and his wife, and Dan and I all together at different points, listening to him, we were able to come up with a proposition that solved the problems that they were having, and that was capital gains tax, long-term income, and they didn't want to have the management that they're tied to that property every day, so they couldn't go on vacation. And some of it was, what happens when I die, right? So when I die, what happens with this note? Because I got a son that sits in there and plays video games all day long, and he's going to blow all the money in the first month after we die. Well,
Mhm.
that doesn't happen when you have a promissory note and it's
Right.
out for some time frame and it's attached to your trust. It's done.
Mhm.
The future's predictable. So he
Right.
can only blow what we give him every single month for the
Right.
next 30 years. So that was one big pain point that he had is
Mhm.
what happens after I die.
Right. So that really solved a problem for him. He didn't have to worry about his son blowing all of his inheritance at one time. So you were able to structure that for 30 years. That was a 30-year payout.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. So
Mhm.
one of
So
those, look back now, it's like, oh my God, I'm paying 4% interest on this, this big
fixed.
payment, right? This big loan. But
Yeah.
where are we at now, right? That's commercial loans.
4% fixed on a commercial loan for 30
Yeah.
years.
Yeah.
That's
Exactly.
pretty amazing.
Yep.
That is. I remember
Yep.
when you were telling me about that, you were pretty excited about buying that mobile home park.
Yeah.
You
Yep.
know, we've got another Max student, Pam Fisher. I pick on
Mhm.
her all the time. She does a lot of stuff with mobile homes, and I mean, you know,
Oh,
it's just all in fun. I mean, the
yeah.
returns are incredible, but
Mhm.
man,
Yeah.
I don't know, mobile homes. So, how many spaces is that park that you got that deal on?
Yeah. This one's small. It's only 10 spaces.
Mm-hmm.
And back to the person, right? It always goes
Mm-hmm.
back to the person.
Right.
I wasn't too keen on this deal,
Mm-hmm.
but I knew if we could make this work, I knew exactly what other stuff he owned. And he
Right.
owns a lot of other stuff that I
Mm-hmm.
want. And this
Mm-hmm.
park was a perfect test case
Mm-hmm.
to uh, perfect a system and a process for mobile home
Right.
parks so we can scale into another 100, 200, much, much larger. But
Mm-hmm.
it's to build the build the trust and the rapport and the relationship with this owner
Right.
for him to lend me other money in the future.
Mm-hmm.
Because now when I go to the park, I've already planted that seed. I went
Mm-hmm.
out to the park. He lives pretty close, so he come over and he's like, Ed, and this is, I want everybody to understand this. This is really, really important. It's you just don't go find these deals in your market people and you send out millions of letters. It's these one-off deals. If you take the
Mm-hmm.
time to nurture them,
Mm-hmm.
can be more prosperous than 100 other regular deals.
Right.
And what I'm talking about is when I'm at the park and he comes over and he goes, Ed, he goes, my God, you guys are doing such a great job with this park. It just looks wonderful.
Mm-hmm.
And I said, you know what? It's my obligation to you to keep this park super clean. I said, you're my partner. You
Mm-hmm.
are my lender. You're my
Mm-hmm.
private investor, my
Right.
partner. I said,
Mm-hmm.
it's my obligation to make sure this collateral is the highest quality and get the most return
Mm-hmm.
NOI that I possibly can.
Right.
It's your collateral. I said,
Mm-hmm.
you are my partner. He's like, oh man, I never even thought about that.
Right. Yeah.
So now the conversation, I took that and I pivoted and I said, hey, you know what? And I knew what he owned. I know he didn't own any apartments, but I said, hey, Steve, you know what? We did a good deal here with you, and it's worked. Everybody's happy. I said, if you own an apartment, I said, I'd love to do something similar with you. And he's like, well, I don't own an apartment because I got a bunch of duplexes. I'm like, oh, well, that's
Mm-hmm.
interesting. Then
Right.
he's got some commercial property. And I said, oh, you know what? You know, it's pretty easy to help you get further along in your retirement if you ever decide to sell any of that other stuff, we can duplicate a similar situation we did here because we got a good track record, right?
Mm-hmm.
We have
Right.
the ability to pay. We've shown that to you. So
Right.
it's
Yeah.
that long-term relationship. You
Yeah.
don't know what other money is going to come into that deal. 'Cause I don't know what else he has. Maybe he's got $1
Mhm.
million sitting in cash. I
Right.
don't know.
Mhm. Okay. Michael had a question. How do you typically structure the rates and terms with private lenders?
Hmm.
And
Yep. I initially start off with interest only or more. So
mm,
if you got $100,000, I'll pay you, 60% interest only or more. That's
mm,
always my standard, interest only, always.
right.
That's the first
Okay.
thing I shoot for.
Hmm. All right. So, but my experience with private lenders is, like we talked about a little bit earlier, if you're just out cultivating, private lenders among the relationships you have, find out what kind of return they're trying to get. And you
Hmm.
might be surprised. I mean, you could just go out, and I know a lot of people do this. They're so anxious to get access to money that way that they'll offer way too much. I mean, I've seen people, they'll offer 8% or 10%. We see people post about that all the time. What should I offer this person? 10%?
Mm,
And why would you? Find out what they want. If they've got money parked in the bank right now, we know what they're getting. We saw Terry's comment earlier about her dividends from the Navy Federal. Once she got paid 1 cent
mm,
this month, and I don't
mm,
know what that was, but if you've got 20,000 or 30,000 or 50,000 parked in a checking account or a savings account, you're not earning anything on it. So why would you offer that? So, well, what are you earning now? Okay, well, I get 1%. All right. Well, what if we could triple that or quadruple that? Would that interest you? Why wouldn't
Hmm.
it? You know, so then you're
Yeah.
paying 3% or 4% or whatever the case may be.
Yep.
So, that's how I start things when I have that
Hmm.
conversation.
Just
But
ask them.
yeah, just ask them what they need. Um, let's see. Matt said, "How did your first private lending conversations go? How did yours go, Ed?"
Yeah, it went successful because I practiced it.
Hmm.
It was rough, right?
Hmm.
And I
Right.
just finally sold that duplex off here. Actually, I sold that duplex. I substituted a collateral onto another property, so that note's still alive. I still
Hmm.
owe money on that note. But yeah, it was. I'm sure if I would have recorded it, it'd be probably pretty bad. But
Hmm.
yeah, I just tried to keep it natural, right?
Right.
Just like we are here, just a
Right.
conversation.
Yeah.
What are you going
Right.
to do with that money? Right? You can stick it in the savings account. You know,
Hmm.
what if I could,
Right.
give you a better return on that that's collateralized by, this property and you have
Hmm.
some income stream.
Yeah.
Yeah, you're gonna
Exactly.
fumble. You're gonna fumble through,
Hmm.
but just be sincere, honest
Right.
and sincere.
Right. And you've got to believe in what you're doing. I mean, and you have to be careful with your private lenders. Now, we'll routinely buy properties at 100% LTV. Would I try to put a private lender into something that's 100% LTV? No, I
Mm,
wouldn't. Those guys are only for situations where there is some equity to protect them, and you want to make sure that you're conscious of that. And
mhm.
uh, a lot of private lenders don't know. I mean, I'm telling you, the first, like I said, I go back to the first one that I got in my conversation with him. Yeah, I bought his house on a sandwich lease option. I shared this a little earlier, Matt, and the reason that he loaned me money, I mean, I delivered the check to him when we cashed his house out, and said, "What are you going to do with that money?" And his response to me was, "Well, what do you got in mind?" Because he knew I was going to ask him, or I wouldn't have asked that question. What are you going to do with that? So if I needed 5,000 or 10,000 or 20,000, I would call him up and he'd say, "Come out here and get a check." He didn't worry about, well, I'll wire it to the closing attorney. I never had a conversation with him like that because he
Mm,
trusted me. So we had that trust thing going on. You're not
yep.
going to have that with everybody, but if you have that relationship after a couple of deals, a lot of times you will.
Mhm.
So,
And
that,
you d- you don't want to abuse it. If you're
mhm,
gonna
right.
if you're gonna bring in a private lender, there's two things you always have to have.
Mhm,
You have to have the available equity space for that
right.
note
Hmm.
and not over encumber that property.
Hmm.
So, I don't go anything above about a 80% loan to
Right.
value, right?
Hmm.
So even with my lenders on it, I always have some equity, some margin on there. And
Right.
the second thing you always have to have is a net operating income to repay that note.
Hmm.
So if you're, and this is why I like multifamily or commercial
Right.
properties, because they're always income generating properties. So I'm
Hmm.
always having some sort of NOI that's being generated by that property,
Hmm.
and it has to be able to repay that note. If I
Right.
don't have the if I have the equity in that property, but I don't have the income to pay that note, then the note doesn't get put on that property. You got
Right.
to find another property. You have to have them both.
Hmm. Yeah.
And when you deal with private lenders, there are unscrupulous people that will like, yeah, I'll stack three lenders on this property, and now you've over encumbered it by 150%. That's not right. That's not
Right.
ethical. It's just completely wrong. So it's
Yeah.
up. And when I do my notes, and it's all up to me to make that decision. I have to make sure that my lender is safe because
Hmm.
it's my reputation, it's their money,
Right.
it's my duty, it's my responsibility to them
Mhm.
to make sure they're safe.
Right. You mentioned something, and I'm going to ask you while we're on that topic. You talk about you like to be at least in an 80% or less LTV to use private money. What do you see going on in this market now? For the last 2 years, man, it has been
Mm,
crazy. But as an agent and an investor, we see a big change here in the last 30 days. I mean, pretty
hmm.
significant. Are you guys seeing that up in your area? Because I know we spent 3 months
Yeah,
in Oregon last year, and man, it was crazy there. It
yeah,
was crazy.
yeah, yeah. You guys are up in Portland, and it's the same
Hmm.
down here.
Right.
Um, like if I'm going to do notes and collateral at this point with lenders,
Hmm.
I'm a little sketchy at where the market is headed.
Right.
So I would make sure I'm extra conservative on
Hmm.
what I'm doing.
Right. I mean,
Absolutely.
it's all speculation at this point. I saw something yesterday. You read this. There's going to be no correction for 5 years, and then I read something the other day about a 20 to 40% correction. And I mean, nobody
Hmm.
knows. But
No.
what are you guys seeing now as far as an increase in days on market and price reductions?
Yes.
Because you can go through Zillow
Yeah.
now in a lot of locations, and it's price reduction, price reduction, price reduction. I pulled a list 2 days ago, man. Some of the days on market were crazy.
Yeah.
So what are you guys seeing?
Yeah, we're seeing the same thing, and I
Yeah.
think we've come to the determination that these price reductions that we're seeing,
Mhm.
it's because the properties are overpriced in the first place.
Right.
They're just,
Right.
it's just a lure out there. The fish
Mhm.
hook looking for that fish to come in, and
Mhm.
people are like, "No, I'm not going to do it anymore."
Right.
Right? Interest rates are creeping up.
Mhm.
The buyer pool has dried up. I know mortgage lenders, um, their number of leads and refinances and new loans, they're much less than what they were, 60 days ago.
Mhm.
Um, so, it's hard to say what's going to happen.
Right.
I do feel that something's going to change. How
Mhm.
drastic? I don't know. It depends on your area. If you
Mhm.
live in, you know, Mobile, Alabama, it's a different market than Eugene, Oregon.
That's right.
It's They're two different places. So, there's going to be those pockets that are good and pockets that aren't so good that can stand what the test of what's going to happen. So,
Right. For sure.
yeah.
Okay. Let's see. Do you borrow long term for seller financing from your private lender? If so, what if the private lender wants to pull out a few years down the road? How do you
Mm.
make them whole? How do you structure your notes like that?
Yeah, the note dictates everything.
Hmm.
So I always try, most of your lenders, when you do owner financing, they're always thinking short term. "Oh, I need
Hmm.
to, I'll do this for 3 years,
Right.
but I'm not in it for 3 years.
Hmm.
7 years, maybe.
Right.
Ten would be the least, right? Because when you borrow funds, you want to make sure you can go through the economic cycle you're in and back
Hmm.
through the next one, and that
Right.
window is typically 7 years.
Right.
So 10 years, I'll do seven, right? As long as I
Hmm.
have
Right.
multiple exit strategies,
Hmm.
especially if it's an income generating property. I have a lot more
Right.
options. Um, yeah, longer the better. But if you
Hmm.
guys sit down and agree, and your promissory note says, it's going to be interest only or more for 30 years or 15 years
Hmm.
or 20 years, it doesn't matter what the note holder thinks.
Right.
It's what the note says.
Exactly.
And if they want to sell the note, hey, awesome. If they need that money, they can sell it, and they're going to get a discounted paycheck for that note. Always, note
Hmm.
buyers, they want a
Right.
discount.
Hmm.
So, but I always put into my notes, I have the first right of refusal to buy the note prior to
Hmm.
maturity. So at least I have the option.
Hmm. Well, I'll tell you how we handle that sort of thing. If it's a private lender that we're just borrowing from for a down payment or some type of situation like that, then we'll do that on a short term, and that may be a 36-month note. Now,
Mhm.
if your private lender comes to you 2 years in and says, "Listen, something terrible's happened. I really need my money," then you move things around. I mean, it is relationship based. You're
Mhm.
not going to go, "Oh no, man, you said 3 years, I can't help you." You're going to do whatever it is you can do to fix
Mhm.
that situation. As far
Yep.
as seller financing from someone, let's say sub two or a seller finance situation, I've always told my students, if I'm talking to someone about sub two and they say, "I can't leave this out there, but 2 years," or whatever the case may be, I can't make that promise. I just can't do it.
Mhm.
Uh, I have to say, listen, all I can promise you is an on time payment each and every month until my buyer gets new financing. I can't predict the future, but I
Mhm.
will make those payments until it happens. We want it to happen as soon as possible because, that's really when we get the bulk of our money too. In this market, the only change we've made to that is we will go a 36-month sub to cash them out. but we're going to put in the contract we have the right to renew that one more time. And if they won't go along with that one, we just can't do it. And here's my problem with it is if you start making a promise like that to somebody, once you make a couple of those promises, it's easy to promise everybody. And then what's going to happen if there is a 40% correction and that $300,000 house that you owe 300 on, that's now only worth, 220, and the 3 years are up and the buyers, your seller's going, hey, it's 3 years in now, you got to do something. Well, I can't do anything with that. What happens then? And you've got 30 balloon notes that you've written out there. And I see that in these groups all the time. Promise them, 2 years, 3 years, whatever to get the deal. I don't agree with that. What do you think about that, Ed?
I agree with you. I agree with you completely. And you have to cherish your private lenders, right? If I have a really good relationship with a lender, and I have a few, right? If they come to me and say, "Hey, Ed, I really need out," my relationship with them is worth more than that money. So, and I know if I pick up the phone, I can find another investor that'll probably take their place and cash them out. It might cost a little bit, right? But you can work that out with your lenders. But give me 90 days to work something out, and we'll do what we can. There's always money. You just have to sit down and have those conversations and try and solve the problem.
Yep. Michael said, how do you typically cash out your lender? What if you wrap a property? Well, for me, that goes back to what I was just talking about. We try to get buyers cashed out in 36 months. Does it always happen? About 86% of the time, but that other 14%, it doesn't. Either they get a divorce, they move out, you got to find a new buyer, they just walk away, they quit paying. Those things happen. My private lenders need to be prepared to stay into the deal until it's, completo. Otherwise, but as far as for the sub 2 type deals and where I guess you could say the lender is your seller, then they're going to have to stay in until it's done. If they're not motivated enough to do that, then I'll let one of those guys that want to give them a 1-year balloon go do it. So they can do it.
Yep. And I typically deal with, again, owner financing. They are my lender. I try and stretch that out as long as possible. I never, ever, ever want to cash them out. If I have that option, it's a forever loan.
I know you mentioned something earlier that you include in your notes about a substitution of collateral. So you can actually, if you even convert a seller to a seller finance situation, like let's say your mobile home park. If you decide to sell that, your note includes a substitution of collateral where you can just move that financing to another property.
Right.
Okay.
Absolutely correct.
That is super powerful stuff there, guys.
I tell you, my humble opinion, it's the most powerful tool in real estate is being able to move collateral for a note. Right. And most people have a hard time thinking about this because for our whole lives, we think of a property and the lending, the financing. They're married. They're always married, right? So you buy a property, you sell it, and then the next loan pays off that loan, right? But if you can divorce those two, separate them. Now you're talking about a whole different game of real estate, completely different game.
Right. Now, for people that don't know here, could you briefly just explain what a substitution of collateral clause in a note is?
Yeah. So basically, in essence, you have the ability to, the note always stays the same. If you write a promissory note to someone for a loan and they're on a second position, whatever position. So you have a deed of trust. In Oregon, it's a deed of trust. Other states, they call it a mortgage. But that deed of trust is the note's going to be collateralized by a certain property. And in your note, right, it's going to say, the initial collateral for this note will be XYZ property, right? But you have the ability to substitute that collateral at a later date based upon a couple of two things of criteria. Like I said, you have to have the equity available for that note to be collateralized against, right? So you can't over encumber the property, and you have to have the ability to repay. So as long as you meet those two, you can simply move that collateral from property A, which maybe you want to sell, over to property B that meets those two criteria. Now that note is still in effect, and that lender still gets that, the person that was gracious enough to own or finance it to you, the note holder, they still get that payment long term. Because remember, in the very beginning, what were we trying to achieve? This is a landlord that wants the income stream off that property, but doesn't want to have to deal with the property.
Right.
So if you make these promises in the beginning that you're going to make long-term payments for them, but then in 2 years later you cash them out, they're going to be like, Ed, what did we talk about 2 years ago? I just wanted income.
Mm-hmm.
Now that you're telling me you're going to sell this and I have to figure out my taxes and all that stuff, it doesn't
Right.
bode well for your reputation.
Mm-hmm.
So when you have the ability to, one, grant them the ability to solve their problems in the first place, long-term income flow, and then two, move that collateral around to continue to keep that income stream for them alive for them.
Mm-hmm.
But then I still have the ability to sell that property.
Right.
Right. Those are two very important things.
Mm-hmm.
Right. Because sometimes I don't want the property. I just want
Right.
the financing.
Right. Right. So going back to before I was an investor, when I just bought 2 or 3 houses for myself, when I went to closing, the attorney said, sign here, sign here, sign here for 30 minutes. And that's all I did. I didn't get to read anything. Do you go through what is going to be in the note and mortgage with your seller as far as a substitution of collateral? Do you make a point of explaining that, or is that just something that's in there? And do they have a problem with it if it is?
Yeah, I write my own notes, every one of
Mhm.
them.
Right.
I do every word, every letter,
Mhm.
and I do talk about. I have a number of different clauses in there, and I sit down and I talk to them and I tell them exactly
Mhm.
what they are and why, because that why fits the narrative that they want, right? They
Mhm.
want that, and it happened, a property I did a number of years back. I sat down with him and I said, "Hey, you're telling me that you want a long-term income stream?" He said, "Yes, that's what I want." I said, "Okay, so I'm going to put in a substitution of collateral clause in here, and this is why I want to do it." So he says, "I don't really understand. That doesn't make any sense." I said, "Okay." I said, "Would you rather have this crappy, dumpy duplex as collateral for this note, or this apartment complex that we own? Which one is better?" He said, "Well, I'd rather have the apartment complex." I said, "Awesome. So then I want the ability to move this collateral over to this apartment complex if the day comes I decide to sell this crappy little duplex and get rid of it. But I want to honor my pledge to you that I'm going to give you long-term income flow for this property, and I need
Mhm.
that substitution of collateral to do that." He's like,
Right.
"I'm totally down with it.
Okay.
I'm totally down with it."
Right.
So easy
Awesome.
way to explain it.
Okay. Let's see. Do you use note servicing to keep you organized? Do you use a note
We do.
servicer? Mhm.
No, we do ours. One of them we do. One
Mhm.
property, a
Right.
larger commercial deal.
Mhm.
Yeah, but smaller ones, they're easy. I think maybe at some point, when you get enough notes, maybe I might hire someone to do it, or
Mhm.
I don't know. I don't have 100 notes yet, so we'll
Right.
see when I get to that point.
Okay. Andrew says days on market about the same there. Andrew's in the Fort Collins, Denver
Hmm.
area.
Yep.
A few days longer on market. Price reductions are down to market value, so they're not marking them up above market value anymore. Marcia says they were overpriced to begin with. Isn't that the
Hmm.
truth? I know
Yep.
that some of the reductions that we see on Zillow now we actually are starting to see some that are priced below the Zillow estimate of value. So that's
Hmm.
promising.
Yep.
Andrew said refis are down 75%.
Mm.
About that.
So,
I guess that's
so
interesting.
yeah. If you guys don't know Andrew, he's an absolute wizard with
Mhm.
mortgage lending.
Yeah.
He's Look at his statistics. He's phenomenal with
Right.
numbers and statistics and charts and graphs, and he's a phenomenal resource.
Yeah, and if you're looking to refi or do anything, any financing or whatever, you should call Andrew. And I'm not sure, Andrew will let us know, I'm sure, how many states that you can do that in right now, Andrew. I think you cover most of the country. I may be wrong on that, but let us know. And put in the chat how to contact you if anybody wants to do anything. Let's see. Matt had a question. So you put all lenders' money in one account, or do you pull from the title company as needed? I don't know what Ed has to say. Again, lenders, we deal with them on a case-by-case basis. When we need money, we don't pool investor money. I think that's a big issue with the SEC, and you need to follow the rules with that. But we call up somebody if we need some money and say, hey, I need 10, I need 20, and that's it.
Yep. Yeah, I definitely keep private lenders separate from syndication deals, because that is a whole different set of legalities, and
Right.
having a private placement memorandum and all that stuff that goes along with that. So yeah, two totally separate things. But private lenders, yeah, it's a case by case deal. Would I don't know if I should say this, but would I pool money? Maybe I have 3 of my private lenders, right? And maybe I need 100,000 from each of them, and say, hey, here you guys, here's a deal that I've got, and these are relationships that I've had for long term, so
Right.
I can go to these people and say, hey, I got 100, do you have $100,000? I need it, right? You're my good friend. So would I pool all 3 of those? I could structure something like that. Maybe it's a new LLC with, fractional ownership or something,
Right.
as partners, right? I think there's a lot of different ways you can do that. But again, be careful, when you start asking for money, and especially if you're pooling money, like the danger zone.
Yeah, but again, if these are friends of yours, people that that you have relationships with, that removes some of the risk that you would have in just strangers that you're recruiting. I mean, we see ads all the time. Hey, paying 12% return on your money. Call BR549. That stuff's pretty much over with now. Let's see. We had a comment here. Love the substitution of collateral. Thanks for sharing. Yep. It's super smart. Let's see. We got Andrew. Oh my gosh. Andrew's listing all the states he does business in. So, Andrew, how do they get in touch with you so you can tell them all that? So give us a chat with your email or phone number, however you want them to contact you. So, Ed, are you also deploying your own funds to other investors for options in their projects, equity or cash flow?
Yes. I just deployed a chunk for apartment syndication here recently. Yep. Self-directed Ira funds. So if you got self-directed Ira funds, this is a great opportunity to become a private lender. If you have, so many of us, the days are gone where a person works for 40 years at one place and they retire. You're moving from company A, B, C, D, E, all these different years. So you have all these 401k funds, retirement plans. They're scattered, right? I see a lot of people, they're got 20,000 here, 50 here, 60 here. Pull that together in a self-directed IRA. I did a video specifically on how to do this. You can go, I can drop that into the Facebook link there. You can just watch the video. It's super easy, right? Get that money consolidated into one fund. Number of different companies that do this, trust companies. Now you can take that money and you can deploy it to help other investors, right? Because sitting in a self-directed IRA or in your 401k, what's going to happen tomorrow? I don't know. 6 months ago, I didn't think Ukraine was going to happen, and thank God I didn't have any money in the stock market.
Right.
Because I personally would rather have my funds collateralized by a house.
Exactly. Okay, guys, if you want to contact Ed, I know he told me today they're always looking for agents all across the country that want to work with them. TheExitAgents.com. You can reach him. You can probably also get him to talk to you about things like substitution of collateral or whatever else. I know Ed likes to talk about real estate. He's a busy guy, though. He flies helicopters and buys houses and sells houses and does all sorts of stuff. So
I'm all over.
Yeah, he's everywhere. He's always
Yeah.
posting pictures. Hey man, I'm flying out to so and so today. I'm doing this. I'm doing that. So he's a busy guy, but you can reach out to him at the Exit Agents. So and do that. Ed, we appreciate the heck out of you joining us today and sharing tips on seller financing and private lenders. So
My
appreciate
pleasure.
you a bunch. Yeah. So you
Yeah,
guys
absolutely.
contact Ed, and if you're an agent or you're interested in investing or have some money to lend, he's always looking for that too. So thanks so much, man. We'll talk to you soon.
Thanks, guys.
All right. All right, guys, that is it for Goat Talk today. We appreciate y'all being here. If y'all have any topics that you're interested in or people you'd like to have us on, send me a message. You can reach me on Facebook or William at sub2deals.com. So if you're interested in the absolute best coaching on the planet for $7 a month, we invite you to visit us at $7coaching.com. So we're going to get out of here. We'll talk to you guys next Thursday. So you get out there, talk to some sellers, and buy some houses.